Hello everyone and welcome back to Nathan Deer's Guide to Everything, and welcome back to the Legend Forge. This week we have Marvel's Batman, The Moon Knight. I've been watching the show on Disney and I think it's okay so far, not amazing, but I was kind of reading into the lore behind The Moon Knight. I thought it was really, really cool, and a friend suggested that it'd be perfect for a Legend Forge episode, so that's what we're doing. The Moon Knight. If you enjoyed these videos, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. But without further ado, I think it's time to jump into this one. Let's go. Okay, so here we are back on D&D Beyond. We're going to jump into edit on the Moon Knight here. We've got the usuals turned on, so homebrew, critical role, magic gathering, Eberron, content, customize your origin, not right now, don't really need it. Feats on, multi-class requirements off, because we have got a few multi-classes going on here. For the race, we've gone with variant human, because obviously Mark Spector or Stephen is a human. For languages, we've gone with primordial, just because I figure the kind of ancient Egyptian influence from Khonshu might influence what language you can speak as the Moon Knight. I'm not really sure. And again, this is not my expert field. I hadn't really even heard of the Moon Knight before the show was kind of being aired. So, but yeah, we're going to move into it anyway. Ability score increase, we've gone for 1 in Constitution and 1 in Dexterity. So our first skill is Acrobatics, because I mean he is in and out of the suit. And we've gone for the feat of Tough. Now famously, Moon Knight is the only character that the Taskmaster will not copy, because sometimes the Moon Knight just chooses to take a hit and then hit back, as opposed to try and dodging it, because it's just more efficient. So we need to be able to take a hit, and we can do. Moving into the classes, you can see it's a very mixed bag here. We have a couple levels in fighter, and that is really to get a fighting style option. We've gone for thrown weapon fighting, so we can throw those crescent darts and everything else that he does very regularly and do a lot of damage with that. For our proficiency, we've gone with insight and survival. Now, survival from his military training, Mark Spector outside of the suit, insight from within it, because the Moon Knight has a great insight into other people. That's kind of one of his superpowers. Actually, he can kind of see through people quite easily. But again, he doesn't really have any superpowers, apparently. He just has enhanced things, and then later on in the comic timeline, apparently he becomes more super. But we're going with kind of the one from the show here, I guess, with a few of the nods from the comics. We have Second Wind, which means you can take more hits. Action Surge, because why wouldn't you want an Action Surge? And I also want to say as well, before I continue, there's loads of ways to make this character. I can't believe I didn't get Rogue in here. He seems like a perfect roguish character, but I had to kind of pick one build. It was either Monk Rogue or Barbarian Rogue, but this seemed to make sense to me. Anyway, moving on. We've got 5 levels in Barbarian for Path of the Zealot. Now, the Zealot, by all accounts, is basically a warrior of God, and it literally says there, 3rd level feature, Warrior of the Gods. But this gets us a Rage, which means you're resistant to loads of damage. We can take a hit, as I mentioned earlier. We have Reckless Attack, and that is, again, exactly what this is. Like I said before, he chooses to take a hit sometimes, so he can hit them back harder. Reckless Attack, perfect. Danger Sense, he has a kind of great awareness of the battlefield. That just comes from his training. Primal Knowledge, we've gone with Perception to kind of lean into that there as well. And I just presumed he had good perception from the white glowing eyes, but you never know, I guess. Primal Path of the Zealot. For our Divine Fury, we've gone with an extra radiant damage, just to represent that damage coming from Khonshu, coming from this ancient Egyptian god. I could have gone Necrotic, but I thought radiant suited more just because of the all-white kind of... I know he kind of strikes from the shadows, but I didn't think Necrotic really suited him, to be honest. He's a hero after all. We have Warrior of the Gods. Now, it is said that basically, if Mark Spector were to die, Khonshu can just raise him from the dead almost infinitely until he chooses a new champion to be the Moon Knight. So this works perfectly. If a spell such as Raise has the sole effect of restoring you to life, but not undeath, the caster doesn't need the material components to cast the spell. So we can just keep coming back, whether from a cleric in our party or from Khonshu just willing us back to life, whatever it might be within your game. And again, this is all just for inspiration on how to play a character like Moon Knight, maybe not him specifically. For ability score improvement at level 4, we've actually gone with the feat and we've gone for mobile because we need to be able to move around the battlefield, and this is perfect. It takes our speed up to something ridiculous like 70, I think, while we're not wearing armor. So incredible. Yeah, I don't need to explain that anymore. 5th level, extra attack. We're going to get that from elsewhere anyway, it doesn't really matter too much. And we've gone to the other 5th level feature, which is the 10 feet while not wearing any armor. So we are absolutely rapid on the battlefield. Then we move into the monk, where we've got 12 levels. Now this is kind of our primary class, as it were. I would probably say if you start in this from a slightly lower level, I'd probably go for the fighter classes first to represent his background just being in the military, then go for a few levels in monk as you move into it, and then maybe pick up barbarian when you get the suit on, kind of thing, if you're doing it over a period of time. But first level we get proficiencies with a few things. We get access to ki, so we can hit things harder, and like obviously this guy very much is a hand-to-hand combatant. Unarmored movement, our speed increases further. Monastic tradition, we've gone with way of the kensei, because as opposed to just using his fist, he does have a wide arsenal of kind of weapons and things that he uses. We have deflect missiles, which I guess is just kind of standard for a monk, we couldn't avoid it. And path of the kensei, going Clivris's supplies, doesn't really matter, that or painters, I don't see him doing any of that really. But we've gone for a quarterstaff because he has the bow staff that he needs to be proficient with, and the darts for a ranged weapon because he throws crescent dart batarangs for all intents and purposes. For our ability scoring movement, we're going to double into dex. Also at 4th level we get slow fall, which you could kind of flavour as the cape coming out so you don't take any fall damage or less fall damage. 5th level extra attack, already discussed this. Stunning strike, very useful just generally. And this is something we just pick up as a monk, nothing to do with the Moon Knight specifically. Key and power strikes, we can punch ghosts. I seem to say this in every video, but there's a lot of monks here. It's because everyone's just hand-to-hand fighting that I seem to cover. Anyway, key and power strikes means we can punch ghosts and other kind of crazy beings. We deal magical damage. Unarmored movement a little bit more. And we have 1 with the blade, which means our kensei weapons, if they weren't magical, are considered magical for overcoming immunity and resistances. We also get death strike. When you hit a target with a kensei weapon, you can spend 1 key point to cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target equal to your martial arts die. So you kind of double your damage basically without having to roll again to hit. So really, really good if you really want to bring something down. For our other kensei weapon, we've gone with a club, and this more closely represents the truncheons that he uses, 1 or 2 within the show that I saw, and he kind of magically makes them appear from his back. At 7th level we get an evasion, which just means we're better at dodging things. Makes sense. He is a superhero after all, with a god's champion. Stillness of mind, we can end one effect on ourselves that causes us to be charmed or frightened. We haven't seen that or anything like that in the show. Again, these are just things that come with picking up the monk. There's some main abilities that kind of represent the character here, and that's the kensei side of this. But regardless, at 8th level we've gone for dex and con improvements. Unarmored movement improvement. Purity of body at 10th level, we're immune to disease and poison. I imagine that a champion of God is immune to like diseases and poison, but then he does struggle with his mind, so maybe not. He has a disorder, right? A dissociative identity disorder, I believe, is what the main character is afflicted with. More unarmored movement. We also have sharpen the blade. We can augment our weapons further with ki. As a bonus action, we can spend up to 3 ki points to grant 1 kensei weapon you touch a bonus to attack and damage rolls when you hit with it. The bonus equals the number of ki points you spent, and this bonus lasts for 1 minute. So damn, that's really good. But that weapon has no magic effect on it already, so it's a so-so ability. I'm not so sure about it. By 11th level, you should have a magical weapon in any game, really, and we'll be like level 16 by this point with all our multiclassing. Anyway, I digress. And our final kensei weapon at level 11, we've gone for the whip, and this is to kind of represent, I guess, the nunchuck side of it, if you wanted to go down that route. There's nothing else I could figure to put in here really, so we went with the whip to represent the kind of nunchuck capabilities that he has. Our final ability score improvement, we've gone with constitution and wisdom. And then to round it out, you could just throw this level 1 in anywhere. There's a very specific reason we got this. We've gone for a divine soul sorcerer. We get a little bit of spell casting, and while he doesn't cast any spells in the show or in the comics or anything that I'm aware of anyway, I think some of his weapons have abilities. But essentially we're here for this. Favoured by the gods. Divine power guards your destiny. If you fail a saving throw or miss an attack roll, you can roll 2d4, add it to the total. he is literally a champion of the gods. So along with the Zealot Barbarian, we gain this as well, which just means we get a potential +8 to anything we roll, meaning we can usually turn a miss into a hit or a saving throw into a success, a failed saving throw into a success. So it's just a really good ability to just throw in there. Cheeky level 1. And I don't think that 1 level benefits from being anywhere else really too much. So that's why we went with it. Moving on to our ability scores, I rolled an absolutely monstrous set on manual rolls, 16, 16, 13, 13, 17, 15, and we prioritised strength, dexterity and constitution, with wisdom taking a slight backseat, and then intelligence and charisma at the bottom there. Now, mental stats wise, he is very switched on, but because of that mental disorder, I thought we'd give him weaker mental stats. Not that 13 is weak, to be honest with you. If I'd have rolled a 9 or something, I'd have maybe put that in like charisma or intelligence. And that's not to say he's stupid, because he's not. He's a trained military assassin. He's a soldier, basically. He is a mercenary. He's very switched on, but in the sense of he can't quite control his mind, perhaps he could go down that route. But wisdom we needed to make our monk abilities work, so we didn't dump that. Our description, quite important for once. Usually these are so-so, but we've gone with soldier, which gives us proficiency athletics, which we failed to pick up so far, so really, really important for those superhero landings, superhero moves we want to do, and intimidation, because if a superhero in all white with glowing eyes that looked kind of mummified with crescent discs and a giant god behind him with a bird face, I mean, I'd be scared. So I feel like this is quite important. And tool proficiencies with vehicles, land only here, but he does have a few vehicles that he uses in the comics, like the Batmobile and the helicopter. I'm not actually sure what it's called. Mooncopter? I imagine that is a guess. I'll try and confirm it when I'm editing this video. But yeah, that's fantastic. So we're all done. We'll jump into the character sheet now. I made a few homebrew things, so let's go and take a look at those. So here we are in the character sheet with +5 to initiative, 20 armor class, and the first thing I'll say is we're not wearing any armor. Now, obviously he does in the show, and they make a big deal out of it being designed by a few different people. There's some Kevlar in there and things, but for this class to function, we can't really wear armor because of Barbarian and Monk. Now, if we'd gone down the rogue side of it, maybe we would have some armor on. I've just decided to leave it out because, again, I think in past videos I've gone overboard with my magic items and things like that. So I've tried to keep it fairly straightforward here. 20 armor class is good enough, especially for a barbarian with 250 hit points, essentially 500 hit points, as long as you're not getting bombarded by spells. You should be fine. Again, this is all for inspiration, so you play this how you want. Let's go over the spells I've chosen first. We literally only have 3. Bane comes from our divine magics. We have Disguise Self, because he often does that, obviously changing who he is on a daily basis, being Mark Spector and Steve, and then the Moon Knight and a few other things that I think I read about on Wikipedia. He's got a few other identities as well. And then we've gone for Silvery Barbs, which is a distract one creature. If they fail on their roll, you get to give advantage to another creature. I feel like, again, this is just kind of a favoured by the gods kind of tie-in, where you can just change the fate of other creatures around you and give it to yourself or a friend in this case. Our spell DC isn't particularly high, only a 15, because we're casting with charisma, obviously, which isn't very high, unfortunately, but we needed that wisdom more. Let's move over to our inventory, where we've done a few things. Now, we'll start with the least rare one, the Moon Knight's Golden Ankh. This is just a weapon of warning, a club of warning. As far as I could tell, that is the only thing that the Golden Ankh that he wielded did in the comics. He hasn't picked this up in the show yet, mind. Next up, we have the Moon Knight's Crescent Dart. Now, I did design this, but it's essentially just a rare dagger with a couple of bonus bits on it. These crescent darts are the primary weapons of choice for the masked vigilante known as Moon Knight. Now, he does throw and use them in melee, so I couldn't actually make them darts. I made them daggers instead because, yeah, like I said, he uses them in melee as well, so they needed to be usable there. They are intended to reflect the shape of a gibbous moon. This is a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls. It returns to the wielder's hand immediately after it is used to make a ranged attack. And from what I can tell, I'm not actually sure this happens, but we don't want to run out of these, and he seems to just pick them from his chest infinitely in the show. I don't know whether that's kind of canon, but that's what the one we're basing it off here. We also have Moon's Blessing. On a hit, this deals additional 1d4 radiant damage, and this damage increases to 2d8 radiant damage during a full moon. So if you can manage to fight during a full moon, damn, you'll be slaying. But yes, and I think that comes from, again, articles I was reading. Apparently In some versions of this character, he gets powered up during full moons and later on in his timeline kind of thing. But now the big one, the one I put the most effort into item-wise, is the Moon Knight's Truncheon. The Moon Knight's Truncheon is a unique multi-purpose weapon. It can take many forms, including a pair of truncheons, a nunchuck, bow staff, or a grappling hook. And now you'll probably see I've listed some damage numbers on it here, also thrown. So the whip proficiency doesn't really come into it so much, but we're proficient with all of them anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. But that just means Kensei weapon wise it's flavor. It's all flavor. I'll get into it anyway. +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls, and it has the finesse property out the gate. You also can't be, this is like a bonded weapon as well, and now from what I can see in Moon Knight, he hasn't been disarmed of any of his weapons yet, but he's not done much combat within the Disney Plus show, but he seems to just be able to pull them from thin air like superheroes do, you know. So I assume that it's just within his form and he can just make it appear if he wants to. Also, I think it's listed in comics that he can kind of zip his bow staff when it's in bow staff form back to him. So we can't be disarmed of this weapon once we're attuned, and if it's on the same plane of existence, we can summon it, teleporting it instantly to our hand, very similar to the Eldritch Knight weapon bond feature. While attuned to this magic weapon as a bonus action, you can change its form to best suit your needs. The magical weapon can take on the following properties. We have Truncheon form, so as long as you have a hand free, you can summon it in both hands. While wielding the weapon in this way, when a creature misses you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction and make a melee weapon attack against the creature. On a hit, you deal additional 1d4 bludgeoning damage. While in this form, it also has the thrown property with a normal range of 20 and a long range of 60. It returns to the wield's hand immediately after it's used to make a ranged attack. We also have the bow staff form. Its reach extends to 10 feet, and when you make a weapon attack and hit, you do an additional 1d8 bludgeoning damage to the target, so it hits a bit harder in this form. While in this form also, the weapon has the thrown property with a normal range of 20, long range of 60, automatically returns to your hand. So you can throw a quarterstaff. Pretty bonkers. Pretty bloody cool though. And this is an artifact level rarity, by the way, only one of its kind, as I believe is in the case of the show. We have nunchuck form. The weapon splits in two and a chain forms between them, allowing you to swing with more ferocity and adopt a more defensive stance, which from research I've done is what nunchaku are for. So there we go. This deals an extra 1d6 bludgeoning damage when you hit something. Additionally, when you first don the nunchuck, you can roll 1d4, you gain a bonus to your AC equal to the number rolled until you change the weapon's form or dismiss it. So that's a permanent defensive buff while you're in this form with a bit of extra bonus damage, but it no longer has that thrown property, so you're limited to just melee engagements. And then finally we have the grappling hook form. As an action, you can launch a grappling hook from the weapon towards a point within 40 feet of you. The rope attached to this hook cannot be cut by non-magical means, so it's a bit more buff than just a rope on a hook. It is coming from this crazy truncheon that can take a million forms. To round out the character, I had to create a feat to kind of build up the rest of his kind of resistances and things. So I've made a feat, Khonshu's Blessing. It has a few perks, nothing too crazy as far as I'm aware. Gives him dark vision out to 120 feet. Now, I don't know if he has this, but he seems to operate at night mostly, so I assume those powers give him night vision. You have resistance to psychic damage, and due to his kind of multiple personalities, it is said that he's more resistant to kind of psychic attack. And on that same, from that same kind of thread, we have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened, which I think is fair considering the form you're in. He literally has a god at his back shouting instructions in his ear. We also are immune to magic that allows other creatures to read our thoughts, determine whether we are lying, know your alignment, or know our creature type. So we are this mystery essentially. And we have advantage on wisdom insight checks, and this all comes from a feat called Khonshu's Blessing. All of these homebrew items will be available on D&D Beyond. You can just search, if you want to find all of them, brackets NGTE bracket to find all my homebrew, or you can specifically search for Moon Knight's Crescent Dart, Moon Knight's Truncheon, or Khonshu's Blessing. As I say, those will all be published in time for this video going out. But that is it. I hope you enjoyed this Legend Forge episode of building the Moon Knight. It was a really fun one and a different one. I don't think I've used Barbarian at all, really, other than create I think it was probably Wolfgar, like absolutely ages ago. So yeah, Barbarian, this was a full multi-class. Let me know how you would have built it. I know there are going to be so many comments down below. Rogue is a clear choice, but I thought this fit better. More of a reckless attacker, a bit more in people's faces with a really cool weapon. Anyway, yeah, all inspiration. So if you enjoyed it, please leave a like, comment and subscribe. This has been the Legend Forge. This has been Nathra and Deer's Guide to Everything, and I'll see you all in the next one.